All right, I think we're ready to begin. Hello everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Ed Arnold, and I'm Vice President of Products here at Leverage Point. And I'd like to welcome all of you to another one of our monthly webinars of thought leadership in value-based strategy. Sponsored by Leverage Point. Leverage Point provides the only software solution for value-based pricing. We offer a cloud-based collaboration platform that supports product innovation as well as sales enablement that changes the way companies create, communicate, and capture value. Find out more about us from our website at leveragepoint.com. Here's our agenda for today, and please note that during the webinar presentation, you are welcome to ask questions at any time by typing them into the right-hand panel within the questions section. So you'll want to stay to the end when we'll be answering all of those questions at the end of the presentation. Also, I'd like to add, if you complete the brief online survey as you exit today's webinar, you will be eligible for the drawing of a copy of the new ROI of Pricing book. So please take a moment to do that. Now, before I introduce today's guest presenter, we'd like to ask our audience a quick polling question, which should be coming up on your screens right now. So please indicate how far your company has gone in adopting a value-based pricing strategy. Choose one of the following. Are you actively engaged, starting to shift, researching how to start, researching if to start, or not sure? So please take a moment and select one of these as I introduce today's speaker. So it's my great pleasure to introduce Frank Frohmann of Evonik Industries, one of Leverage Point's European customers. And Frank is based in Germany and is a business coach in the area of pricing and management systems. And as you can see, he has a broad range of professional experience. He's worked as an external consultant for prestigious firms like Simon Kucher, and he's also served as an internal consultant at leading industrials, namely Bosch, and then currently at Evonik. And finally, he served in a number of pricing operations roles at Lufthansa. So clearly a very impressive resume, and certainly a lot we can all learn from his expertise. So I'd like to introduce Frank. Welcome, and thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Ed. It's a great pleasure to hold the presentation today. I would address it like this. I want to share my experience, as mentioned by Ed, the last 20 years that I worked in pricing together with you. So it shouldn't be a one-side presentation, though more a discussion. It's a lot of content that I want to show. And to explain the agenda, it's consisting of 4 chapters. I want to start with some basics.
So Frank, before we get started with your presentation, I'd like to show the results of our panel.
Okay.
And you should be seeing those on your screen as well. So how far has our participants gone in adopting a value-based pricing strategy? So we're seeing a pretty good mix here. Some, about a third actively engaged, but the majority either researching or just starting to shift to value-based pricing. So I think there's a lot of interest in this topic, and I think you'll have a lot of people very eager to learn from you. So I will hand it off to you, Frank.
Thanks a lot. So to explain the overall agenda, so now I'm in. The presentation consists of 4 chapters. I want to start with the basic laws or principles in pricing. So it's my perspective on pricing, which I put together and of course want to discuss with all of you today. In the second chapter, I want to refer to pricing excellence or the performance in different industries and companies, and that's very close to the result Ed showed, because it's more or less dealing with the excellence and performance of all of you in pricing. The third chapter deals with pricing challenges, latest trends, which have an impact on pricing and on the pricing excellence of all of you. And last but not least, I want to refer to good and bad practice examples of companies which were able to innovate with new pricing models and structures. So, 4 chapters. To start with the basic laws. When I thought about pricing and customized the presentation to today's webinar, I reflected about the fact, how can I describe pricing in a very simple way? And in the end, I came up with some figures which, from my point of view, explain pricing very well. So all of you know that pricing is the most important profit lever. That's what textbooks of especially external consultants refer to each and every time, and I just wanted to show the profit equation with a 3M. So profit, all of you know that, is made up of market share, market volume, and margin. And usually a price increase has a very positive effect on profit. That's what you can read in almost each and every textbook, that a price increase has a more positive effect on profit than an increase in sales volume or a reduction of cost. But you don't have only the huge potential of a price increase, but it can be the opposite way. Very often a price decrease has a very negative effect, and the most negative effect of all the profit levers. It's 2 directions. To summarize it, it's of course the most important profit lever, but it can have a devastating effect as well if you don't integrate all the necessary information. And that leads to the third rule, or the third law, so to say, that you always should and have to integrate 3 information when you talk about pricing or decide about pricing steps, pricing strategies. And that's shown in the profit optimization cube. The 3 information are: first, the margin, the internal margin you have; second, the customer reaction; and third, competition, or the competitive reaction. And customer reaction is the willingness to pay that always should be integrated in pricing. So in textbooks, sometimes you find the logic that there is a cost-based pricing, a customer-based pricing, and a competitive-based pricing. From my point of view, it can't be that isolated. You always have to integrate cost, customer, and competition at the same time. And that's reflected in the cube. And you should always integrate these 3 information. And I wanted to come up with a question and discuss it with you today. If you have a look on the cube and a certain cases that are relevant in reality, high versus low margins, weak versus strong customer reaction, what do you think, in which situation, in which of the 9 cells of the cube, to put it in other words, is a price decrease or an increase most effective? And that, from my point of view, should be the answer on each and every pricing simulation or decision that you do. The answer is, to make it quick and simple, only if the customer reacts very strongly to a price move, and especially if your margins are high. Meaning, in the upper right cell, a price decrease is effective or most effective. And in the opposite way, only if the customer reacts very weak, if there is no reaction at all, hopefully, and especially if your margins are low, meaning in the lower left corner, a price increase is most effective. What I want to show with this cube is, as I mentioned before, you have to have this information on your margins, on the customer reaction, and on the competition in order to know where to move. Though there is a lot to know, there is of course a pricing science that has to be learned in order to do the right decision. And that can be summarized very effectively with this cube. To proceed, and that's the next rule or principle in pricing, usually pricing deals with trade-offs, and that can be shown in another matrix very efficiently, which has the two dimensions, market share and margin, which are the most important determinants of profit. Again, usually pricing deals with trade-offs. Either you decrease prices, which means your margins go down, and the volume or market share goes up, meaning you end up in the upper left corner, or it's the opposite way. And that's what is meant with trade-offs. So you always have to balance your targets, to put it in other words. The worst thing that can happen is if you decrease your prices and your volume and market share goes down as well. And that's especially the fact or the effect in price wars. Let me name some examples. The airline industry is a perfect example on situations where prices are decreased, all competitors move, and in the end no one wins because the overall volume doesn't go up. And the second example, at least in Germany, is the retail industry, where the market leader, which is called Aldi, decreased prices heavily in the past. Margins went down, but the market shares and the volumes didn't go up. They went down as well. So this is the situation you should always prevent and avoid. What is the best situation? It's the upper right corner. And that's a situation or circumstance where you've got real pricing power, where you are able to increase prices, raise your margins, but you don't lose volume or market share. There are examples, companies, industry situations which describe this quadrant in the matrix, what is called pricing power or pricing dream. If you have innovative products, one example is Apple, but there are a lot of other examples, for example in the automotive industry, Porsche, Ferrari, to name two. If you have a very high market share, so a very good starting point, if you have something to differentiate across the whole value chain, not only the product as such, could even be the brand image. And last but not least, and that's the story for today, if you are able to differentiate by a new approach in pricing, by a new price model, by a new price structure. And therefore, I wanted to integrate the example of Michelin, a company all of you know, which deals with tires. And they were able to derive a completely new price model. That's what I name pricing innovation. And with this new price model, they made a real difference in the market. They were able to increase their margin and also the volumes and market shares. And they ended in this perfect part of the matrix. I want to refer to this example later on in the fourth chapter, where it's more about pricing innovation. But don't forget Michelin for the time being. The fifth principle or rule in pricing is, as I mentioned before, it's a lot about big data. What you can see on the right side in the chart, you have to integrate customers, customer reaction, willingness to pay, competition, cost, of course, and the capacity. That's all mentioned on the right side of this chart. But even more important is the left side, the company targets. I named some of them: profit, revenue, growth, last but not least, price image. From my point of view, the information part, meaning the knowledge about customers, competition, costs, which is shown on the right side, is quite good. But very often, referring to the left side, companies are not that good in prioritizing their targets, really defining what is of highest importance. Do we focus on profit? Do we focus on revenue? Is it market share we are heading for? And there you have a huge target conflict usually, at least that's my experience and impression in the last 20 years in many companies and industries. And we should discuss that later on. And of course, depending on the targets you set on the left side, the pricing potential that you can cover and the price decision that you do in the end is different. But let's leave that for the discussion after the presentation, I would propose. And the last rule or principle in pricing is very complex, of course. It deals at least with 6 dimensions. And I just want to show the result more or less, and we can discuss that in the end as well. If you talk about price and you do a price decision in whatever currency, euro, dollar, or whatever, you always refer to a certain customer, a product or service, a sales channel in a certain region at a certain time and for a certain volume that the customer wants to have. So each and every pricing decision, the pricing strategy as well, refers to and integrates at least these 6 dimensions. And it means, again, it's very complex. You have to have a lot of information. You have to have a sound strategy, and last but not least, you have to manage it in a very consistent way. And that again is something, at least that's my impression, many companies have to catch up. They have to be aware of this complexity and deal in the right manner with this complexity. To summarize it, that's my impression. Very often, many people touch pricing, deal with pricing, do price decisions, but very often nobody really owns it. And then, based on the picture I came up with a 1 to 6 pricing rules and the logic, the goal to be in a driver's seat, that would mean you are not in the driver's seat anymore, but you have the reverse gear. If nobody owns pricing in a big company, for example, let's talk about Evonik, the company I'm working in, which is a huge chemicals company, then that would lead to the fact that you don't exploit the huge profit potentials that you usually have. What does that mean? In reality, from my point of view, the excellence, the pricing performance, which is shown on the horizontal axis, it is not that high across several industries. That's at least my impression. But the pressure is growing consistently, significantly in pricing. And that means a lot of companies, industries have to catch up. They have to tackle and face the pressures and increase their performance. Some of the challenges and pressures in pricing I just summarized and listed in the chart you can see here, so-called macro trends with an impact on pricing. One is digitization. You all know that, the internet, it's not a new trend, but it's still ongoing. And there are new tools, especially available for customers to inform themselves about prices, not only static tools anymore, but especially the mobile internet and mobile applications are much more important today than they were 3 or 4 years ago. Another trend is a change in buying behavior. To name one industry, one example, the automotive industry, many consumers don't talk about buying a car anymore. It's more about using several sorts of cars, several car configurations in certain situations or circumstances. And companies like Mercedes-Benz in Germany, to name one example, they are reacting on this trend. It's not so much about buying or selling cars anymore, but buying and selling mobility as such. And that has an impact on pricing as well. Last but not least, another trend is the standardization of sales processes. As we don't have so much time today to discuss in details all these trends, I want just to show it in a very simple and easy way and point out, especially in the 4th chapter, that there are some very successful companies which tackle these trends, react on these, and are very successful in pricing. And in the lower part of the chart, I just named some of these concepts and methods. One is vertical pricing, which deals with new revenue or price models in order to capture more of the value that companies generate. Contextual pricing, which is very close to the example I listed or named before, the automotive industry, where you set prices depending on specific situations the customer is in. Dynamic pricing is another rather new and innovative approach. So now I want to introduce you in more detail to the fourth chapter, which is, at least from my point of view, the most interesting one, which are called pricing innovation. I just came up with 4 examples across the whole pricing process. You know the pricing process, I'm quite sure, which starts with the analysis, then covers the part of the pricing strategy definition. Next step is the definition of price structures, and last but not least, the price monitoring. And I want to cover the whole process and show some innovative ways to do a pricing analysis, to derive new price models, to think about innovative price structures, and last but not least, price monitoring. And to start with the most interesting part, I want to show a new innovative way to do a pricing analysis. In this chart, you can see a lot of tools and methods which are able to derive the willingness to pay, the customer value, the value that a new product or an existing product generates in the market. And what we did in the Evonik world was to integrate some of these concepts, especially, of course, I have to mention the customer benefit waterfall of Leverage Point. Evonik is a company which uses Leverage Point software. And we added some other concepts that you might know, like Van Westendorp and a value driver analysis, in a quite innovative way in order to derive everything which is relevant in order to derive the right pricing strategy and do a sound pricing decision. So as we don't have too much time today, I can't explain all the methods I show in this chart in very detail. Of more relevance is the next chart, which shows the logic of deriving a price strategy, which is to show in detail what is the value that we generate with our product or service, which is shown in the vertical dimension, vertical axis here, and what is the price we want to set for an innovative product, and that's the value capturing part. At the very beginning of the webinar, Ed just referred to value capturing and value exploitation, which is the pricing part, and referred also to the value generation. And in this innovative way, doing a pricing analysis and deriving a pricing strategy, we just combine these 2 dimensions. And the logic is to derive the value for the new product with a mix and combination of methods compared to some competitors, which are showed on the vertical axis, and then to come up with the right pricing decision, integrating some methods and tools like value waterfall of Leverage Point, Van Westendorp, and also an internal price volume assessment. And what is even better is doing so and integrating the willingness to pay of customers, you are able to quantify the impact of several price scenarios on all the KPI which are referred to at the very beginning when I showed the company targets. So to name some, volume, revenue, contribution margin. Then in doing so and integrating all these information and methods, you really can show the management, even the top management, what would be the impact if we increase or decrease our prices. Referring to the picture that you all can see, it's just a dot in the middle, our new product, where we want to derive the value to the customer and then come up with the right pricing decision in the end. And then we are really able to answer the question, what would happen if we move the bullet point, the new product, the price, to the left or to the right, if you go down or up? What is the impact on volume, revenue, contribution margin? And that's the most relevant information at all in price and product management, at least from my point of view. And I would be very happy to discuss it in detail later on. So let me just continue with the presentation, and I'm sure some of your questions will refer to this innovative way to do a price analysis. Second chapter is price model. A price model consists of several elements, which I show in this chart. It's consisting of a reference base. Questions are, what is a payment structure? Is it a regular payment or one-time payment? What is a transaction logic? Is it a usage-dependent price or rather a fixed price or flat rate? And the second dimension is a price metric, dealing with questions like, do we want to have a bundle price or rather do a debundling? And last but not least, what is the number of price dimensions or components? So this is theory, means if you talk about price model, you should have the knowledge about this theory, of course. And if we have a look on successful or not that successful companies, the learning is that traditional price models are usually based on the numbers of products sold. So a car sold or a mobile device sold or whatever the product is that you sell. And that usually leads to the fact that you have a very high transparency from the customer point of view, because it's the price tag that you always can refer to a product, and then you can compare competitors and products very easily. Innovative price models do it in a completely different way. They don't refer to the product as such, but to the overall business model, the preferences, and last but not least, the willingness to pay of the customer. And they are able, by doing so, to monetize the whole value advantage. And I show you some examples which really explain it in a very detailed manner. And again, the price model, and I show this with this very simple chart, refers to the overall business model and very important, even more important, to the value to customer. To show you 4 very successful examples, I use this slide, and let me just refer to Michelin, because I explained it 10 minutes ago. Michelin, or the traditional business model of Michelin, is selling tires, and the price model was always based on a price per tire. 100 euro, 200 euro, whatever the price tag is per tire. And they came up in 2009 with a completely new and innovative tire. The value to customer was that the tire lasted 25% kilometers longer, so the duration was much longer. And they thought about increasing prices by 25%. And came up with a conclusion that that would not be possible, because we've got this anchoring effect. Customers are used to a certain level of pricing, and they wouldn't accept 25% price increase. Thinking about that, they came up with a completely different logic, and they came up with an innovative price model which deals with selling kilometers or miles. So the customer doesn't pay any more for a tire, but for the mileage or the kilometers his vehicle runs. And that's especially important for B2B industry. In doing so, in changing their price model, they were of course able to implement a price increase of 25%, because when the tire lasts 25% longer, and the customer pays for the duration, he pays 25% more. And it was highly accepted, very successful in the market. Referring to the matrix I showed in the very beginning, Michelin was able to increase their prices significantly, and the volume and even the market share went up, because this new price model was a way to differentiate in the market, to generate more value by implementing a new price model. And there are other companies, to name some: Enercon, which is wind turbines; Orica, which is the market leader. It's an Australian company selling dynamite in the B2B business as well. And last but not least, the elevator business. This is a German company like Schindler. And they all were very successful, again to summarize it, in introducing a very innovative price model in the market that couldn't be directly copied by the competitors because it was innovative and consisted of very detailed customer information. And by this, not by the price move as such, but by a new model, they were able to differentiate. So when I was talking about these very successful examples, I came up with the question: is that just by hazard that they were such successful, or did they do something different than their competitors? Of course they did, because they were excellent and high performant. They integrated a lot of decision criteria, and I just try to summarize them in this chart. They thought about their own targets, which is the first criteria. They thought, of course, about the customer acceptance. They reflected about industry specifics, and last but not least, they integrated their overall business model. And in doing so, reflecting about all this criteria, they came up with the new and innovative approach. So it's hard work. It's hard work to come up with successful models, but it's very worth thinking about all these issues and deriving the right model by a decision support model, which I wanted to quickly introduce you with the help of this chart. So I talked a lot about successful companies. Of course, there are bad practice examples as well, just to name one. Whenever there was no incentive for the customer, in the case of Sixt, a German rental company, or when there was no link at all to the customer's business, software example, SAP, again, a German company, when the structure was too complex for the customer to understand, this is a case, or was a case of Allianz, insurance company in Germany, or if the number of price models is just too high and too complex, telecommunications industry, the companies failed. Failing meant, in the case of SAP, that the CEO was blamed for this failure and he had to leave the company, because especially the huge customers complained about a price move, a new price model, which he wanted to implement in the market, and he completely failed. Why? Because the customers didn't accept it. There was no link to their business. There was no link to the overall value generating process of the customers. And that, again, refers to the chart I showed before. All these companies didn't integrate the criteria which I referred to at the very beginning, and then they were not successful in the market. So the learning is, talking about a new price model is worth the effort, it's hard work, and you really can make a difference in the market. Last but not least, I want to refer to price monitoring, and I refer to a chart that I saw in a pricing conference, and it was a leader of the pricing department at Schneider Electric. He showed a very innovative approach, which consists of tracking 3 kinds of KPI, which make up the overall pricing performance index. One is the typical economic KPI, financial KPI, like volume, turnover, and contribution margin, and tracking how price moves have an impact on all these KPI. But even more important is an excellence KPI, meaning this company really tracks how good or bad different pricing processes, sub-process, are internally. And last but not least, they also track their pricing power, so the external power they have in the market. And that's very close to the first chapter, where I showed some circumstances where you've got really huge pricing power, especially in the case if you have innovative products. If you have something to differentiate in the market, last but not least, a good brand image, and it could be also a new price model, a certain way of structuring prices, that also can lead to pricing power. And these three KPI should be and have to be integrated in order to derive your overall performance index, and that makes the difference between successful and not that successful companies from my point of view. To summarize it very easily, I quickly referred to the fact that pricing is complex, and complexity and especially dynamics will grow in future even more. In order to be excellent in pricing, you have to have a consistent process first. That's a precondition. You have to make sure that you know your customers very well, so it's all about customer intimacy, deriving willingness to pay, customer reaction. You have to have sound tools, even better integrated tools, and I showed you this new or innovative way to do a pricing analysis, using tools, standalone tools, and combining them in a very efficient and innovative way. And last but not least, it's about creativity, innovation, agility, to try to be innovative upfront in the market. And that's what you call proactive pricing, referring again to the very simple picture I showed with the gear and the car you are sitting in. Proactive pricing means to do price management, not price reaction, really sitting in the driver's seat. So I'm very interested in the questions that come up, and it was a pleasure to share my experience with you. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Frank. Yes, we do have some questions, and let me just say I really appreciate the great insights you've shared with us, and especially the specific examples, the successful case studies, and the otherwise case studies. I think they're both good to keep in mind. So I just want to remind participants that there's still some time to enter some questions. I know there was a lot of rich content here, and so if you'd like Frank to respond to anything in particular, please enter that into the questions panel on the side. But first I want to build on the points about pricing analysis and share a typical example of how our customers use leverage point to scale their pricing innovation. And so what I have here is a typical, and I'll also note, sanitized product development scenario where you have an innovative product fighting a battle on two sides, one against cheaper competitors, which is a reality nowadays, but also against larger procurement forces, that is with a large OEM customer such as an auto maker, which is what this case is based on. In particular, you could see how the innovative product delivers several economic advantages. Those are those green bars on the left. And they provide value to the OEM in a variety of functions: less material costs, lower aftermarket costs, potentially higher sticker price. These value drivers are created and quantified with the use of our powerful value modeling software. And then further, you see on this screen, we are also modeling potential value prices based on the multiple customer sensitivity factors like reference price expectations, switching costs, etc. This allows teams to have a greater confidence in setting a price that captures some of this value, which in turn helps keeping discounts to a minimum. So that's one specific example of how our customers use leverage point. Also, I wanted to share with you some quotes. These are from some of our actual users, and they describe the benefits they get by embedding this type of capability into their product development process. And you'll see quotes there about the ease of use, collaboration, efficiency, and of course, everyone's favorite, the bottom line results. So please contact us if you'd like to hear some more. So at this point, we'll get back to the Q&A. And again, this is your last chance to add some more questions to the list. We also have our contact information on the screen right now, so if you would like to follow up with Frank on any particular points of his presentation, you can reach him there, and of course you can always reach us at Leverage Point. We will be making a copy of the slides available to all our participants, as well as a copy of this recording, which will be on our website soon, so you'll be getting an email on that. All right, so Frank, are you ready to answer a few questions?
Of course, it's a pleasure.
All right. So first question is, can you provide an example of an internal pricing excellence KPI?
Of an internal pricing excellence KPI, yes. I'm not talking about Evonik, but a company I worked in before. They defined a pricing process. I referred to that before, which starts with the pricing analysis, then covers pricing strategy, setting prices, doing the price implementation, and last but not least, the price monitoring. So it consisted of 5 overall steps. Then within these generic steps, they defined sub-process steps, and they defined what are certain levels of excellence. To describe it in more detail, I want to refer to price setting and value-based pricing. They defined what is the best way and a very excellent way to derive value-based pricing. That would mean 100% excellence, and it would mean to integrate certain tools, methods to derive information about the customer in a certain way. So they really specified several levels of excellence on a scale from 0 to 100% for each and every sub-process step and process steps as a whole, and by doing so, integrating all these values on a certain percentage scale, they came up with an overall percentage value of excellence. And of course, to even describe it in more detail, none of the business units of these huge company reached 100%. That would be completely unrealistic. But it was very important to see what is the level. Is it 40%, 50%? And then really to work out how can we improve on that scale. What do we have to do across all the process steps to have a better pricing analysis, a better pricing strategy, last but not least, a better price monitoring. And that was very detailed. From my point of view, the best way you can do it, because you not only have the overall KPI, the excellence from 0 to 100%, but you really know in detail how you can move across a certain time period, let's say several years, up on this scale, and what you have to do. Very pragmatic. And that could mean if you don't have a right value-based pricing approach, maybe to think about using software solutions like Leverage Point. That is an idea that just comes to my mind short term, but it's a very good example, because usually companies are not that far. They try to let's say, derive willingness to pay customer reaction in a certain standardized way, but seldom, very seldom, at least in Germany, they use really sophisticated tools. And there's a lot to do.
Okay. Next question. You show a lot of different types of tools and methods, and I was wondering if you could comment on who actually uses those. Are those used by pricing managers, product managers, marketing, sales? Could you elaborate on that, please?
Yes. And I refer, yes, to all the experiences as an external consultant, as an in-house consultant, even working in operative price management. The situation is different depending on the overall situation. When you talk about a new product, it's usually the product manager combined with the pricing manager which uses these tools, and then very often even sophisticated tools like conjoint analyzers are used. In the daily work, when you've got a product which is in the market for a long time ago, you don't use these very sophisticated, even expensive ways of analysis tools like conjoint. You use usually more simple and efficient tools, and make sure that especially the salespeople can use them. And to refer, maybe it makes a lot of sense to refer to the chart pricing analyzer that I showed in the presentation. That was a combination of several tools we just used in a project where it was all about a completely innovative product, and that was worth the effort to use the whole portfolio of tools and combine them in a certain way. But that is seldom the case. But to just summarize it, the best thing you can do is to think about a new and innovative combination of existing methods that is easy to use and that can be used by salespeople, price managers, product managers, even top managers in a very efficient way, so that all the information can be shared. And that's what we are heading for. That you have a very standardized discussion because everyone has access to the same information. And the situation in some companies is, I'll just give you an example, is that sometimes a very expensive and time-consuming conjoint analysis is done, but the results are not used in a very efficient way. So all the information that you can take out are not usually used in the best way, and a lot of potential is left on the table, to put it in other words.
Okay, we have a question about calculating price, and the question is, do you find calculating price elasticity as defined by microeconomics to be effective in capturing customer sensitivity, or is there more to that issue?
Yes, I find it's more than effective and realistic. This question is raised a lot of times because sometimes people have the impression that it's theory, that it can't be used in the business, and it's completely the other way around. And that's what I wanted to show with this chart of pricing analysis. To give you a more concrete example, even if you don't have the chance to apply a conjoint analysis, to do a market research or a customer survey, you can derive a price elasticity in a certain way by doing an internal workshop, and usually we do so. And that means you have a standardized discussion with your salespeople, with product managers, all the responsible persons which are experts on a certain product or product portfolio, and just come up with estimation on how volumes would change if you would apply several price moves. And if you do this in a very standardized way with the help of a rather simple Excel tool, you can derive at least an indication for the price elasticity and the willingness to pay. But once again, the best thing is to combine it, to explicitly ask customers in a very efficient way, and then combine this internal exercise and compare the results. And by this you can see, are we really able to assess the market in the right way. Do we over or underestimate? And once again, you don't need to have very sophisticated tools. It's all about the simple logic that I referred to in the very beginning. Price has an effect on all the KPI like volume, revenue, profit. And you definitely start by the question, how would a price move impact on volume at the very beginning, and then by integrating all the other criteria like cost, you come up with revenue and profit in the end. And you can do it in each and every case. And we did in a project in the last month, where even salespeople were a little bit reluctant about doing this exercise and talking about it. In the end, everyone was very satisfied in thinking about this price-volume relation in a workshop in a very standardized manner, and then by deriving some sort of quantified results. And everyone was really happy about this new way of discussing it.
All right, I think we have time for one last question, and that is, please comment on where you gather the necessary data, especially customer data, to do value analysis.
Yes, it's very close to the question that was raised before. The best thing is to get into the discussion with the customer, either for a new product or for an existing product, with the help of your salespeople. And the logic is not to ask explicitly about willingness to pay, but to start with a value, to have a very open discussion about how customers value different product features, service features, the brand, and then in the end, only in the end, integrate, of course, some sort of question about a price, but not start with a willingness to pay in the beginning, and always focus and prioritize the value part or the value generation part. And that's what we always do. Talk about value first, and then in the end, of course, try to derive where is that certain threshold or maximum willingness to pay. And usually customers are able to quantify, to describe it, and it's all about leading the discussion in the right way. And that's the best thing, is to integrate your salespeople, to put it all on the table, to talk about value, and in the end about a certain threshold that the customer has in mind that you shouldn't, of course, exceed. And then you take all these results out of the interviews, bring them together, combine them, calculate it, and then you're able to derive everything what I showed in these charts I showed before. And once again, it's not about using very expensive market research or customer analysis. You can also do this with rather customized, handmade solutions, because it's all basic business knowledge. You just have to apply it in a new way.
All right. Well, that was great. Really liked that answer, Frank, about collaborating and talking with the customer without defending the price, but to actually getting into a more general business discussion. That was really great.
The most important thing, just maybe I can just summarize it in the end. Of course, there's always, in each and every project, there is this challenge, because the project team, the product managers we are talking with, the salespeople, especially the salespeople, they ask us, is it really realistic to do it in that way? And in the end, and it was my impression in each and every case, that's really a very open answer, everyone was satisfied with the way of asking it and just doing and trying this exercise, independent of the results. And I have no case in mind where a customer said, I'm not willing to answer these questions. Usually, customers are really happy to talk about their requirements, their preferences. And in doing so, they are then also willing to talk about price in a certain way. And what would happen if they say, I don't give you any answer at all? If one customer, and that usually is really the exemption, would do it like this, 90% or 95% of other customers really are willing to say something on willingness to pay on a certain threshold they have in mind.
Mm-hmm. All right, great. That's all the time we have left for today. Again, there's contact information for Frank if you want to reach him with questions. We'll also be posting a link to this on our blog, and I'll throw that out there to our audience. If you want to continue this discussion, we can certainly have additional questions and answers in the blog that we have as well. So stay tuned for that. I just want to quickly announce our next webinar on May 28th, featuring Mike Wilkinson from Axia Value Solutions. And Mike will be talking about how to align pricing and sales, which is another great topic. Mike is a terrific speaker. He's also known as the Dolphin Trainer, and he has a great story around that. So you don't want to miss that. So look forward to an invitation soon. And again, remember to fill out the 2-question survey for a chance to win the book. And for that, I'll say thank you again, Frank, for being with us today.
It was a pleasure. Thank you for the invitation, sharing the experience.
All right. Great, and thanks everyone for joining us. And until next time.